Hey everybody, I said I didn't want to talk about Layers of Fear until I'd seen all the endings, and now I have. And I've seen some explanations of the plot out there that just don't make sense to me. And spoilers ahead, but I'm hoping that everybody who's watching this has seen the endings and maybe can enlighten me on some of the things that I don't get. And I've kind of worked up a sheet here of points I want to hit. I'm not going to worry about doing the footage. I'm just going to hope that you've seen the videos and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's see. Without any confirmation from Bloober Team on whether or not anything supernatural is happening, all of this is speculation. Like, I know the first one was supposed to be just straight up madness and there are no actual ghosts, but that doesn't really make sense in the context of Layers of Fear 2, to me at least. First things first, you are Jimmy. You are not Lily. There's no doubt about that. You're not some weird amalgam monster. You're just a possibly insane Jimmy. And every top hat man you see in the game is also Jimmy. Also, the glowy-eyed kid is also Jimmy. So first thing, we wake up on a damaged ship, we make it to our cabin, and we're confronted by this alien lady who says it's a shame and that we almost had it. Then she pops Jimmy's head off and we black out, waking up in this pristine cabin. My take on that is based on the Formless ending that we're stuck in this loop until we either choose Lily or James. That seems to kind of be confirmed by the New Game Plus, showing that scene again. Plus, it's also possible that all of the endings result in a loop. That neither Jimmy nor Lily can hold the body for long, and this is assuming that they are literally souls occupying the same body. Or, if it's a character that we're developing, it wasn't perfect enough, and that's why we get sent back into the loop. Then again, we're never really explicitly shown what's in the custom-ordered man-sized trunk. So it could be the alien witch lady, it could be the other personality trying to break free, who knows. Alright, first thing I noticed while I was playing, the dressing room contains no male clothes. It's dresses and ladies' hats. And that really makes sense when you think about how the endings are related to whether you choose to obey or disobey the director. The director said that his goal is to rekindle the original flame. And he's always saying about a borrowed flame burns out. And if you take all of the obey options, you end up with Jimmy, the actor. And what makes me think that he's been living as Lily is part of Chapter 5. Once you hit that final switch, when you're assembling or disassembling the mannequin, he refers to Jimmy as the boy who never says anything, which means that he's been the suppressed personality all this time. We get that flyer that has the voiceover that says, "I know how much you hate the sea." It just reminds us that it's dredging up old trauma because of Lily and James being on the boat. This is kind of an interesting note. The filming is supposed to take place on the Ulysses, and the flashbacks take place on the RMS Odyssey. Both are references to Odysseus and the Odyssey. And so is the film in Chapter 3. I can't really figure out how that's relevant to the story, but I just thought it was a cool little tidbit. We picked up that cane that said the director is broken or disfigured. That could be setting up Jimmy or the Formless Man as the director. I lean towards Jimmy because the director later says, "Look at the Formless Man" in Chapter 5 as it's crumbling. Then again, the director is also Jimmy, so maybe we should be treating everybody in the game as a different part of Jimmy. Another thing I wanted to pull up, hang on, I'm actually going to pull this one up. Here it is. Performance for the Ages. This article actually, if you look really closely, it looks a lot like the alien. I'm just going to call her the witch from now on. I just thought that was cool. And it mentions having the character burst into existence. I think that's another reference to method acting. But you'll see why I think that explanation falls apart later on. Then we see Jimmy trying to escape through a grate later on. Let's see if I can find that. Oh, before that, we actually have our first decision encounter, where the director tells us to kill the lady, who is Lily. Obviously, he wants us to kill the Lily personality. Okay, I can't find it, but we see Jimmy trying to escape through a grate at one point, and then he turns around before he leaves and says to us, she doesn't like you playing with other people. Or she doesn't like you playing with anyone but her. And I don't know if that's Lily or the witch, because at no other point in the game do we see whether Lily, or how Lily feels about you playing with others. So it could just be the witch not liking you obeying the director, because I did choose... Well, actually, no, I don't think that dialogue changes whether you obey or disobey the director. But after that, we get back to the stateroom and we move on to Chapter 2. This chapter just seems to be telling the story of them stowing away and losing their food, and a little bit about how powerful Jimmy's imagination might be, because we see the pirate scene imposed over the game several times. We get the autograph, or we get the picture where the woman says that she has mistaken us for somebody else. Let's see. Do I have that? But it's just this half shredded picture with a voiceover about a lady saying, "Oh, I'm..." Like, she's starting to say that she's my fan, and then she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I think I've mistaken you for somebody else." And that becomes a kind of a theme in this chapter as well, because we pick up a camera shortly thereafter, and the photographer says, I think you must have moved. You don't quite look like yourself." And that's kind of where... It's a minor thing, but it's where the idea that this is just method acting starts to break down for me, because it's people noticing physical changes in Jimmy. And then we get the reversed camera recording, and again, if you've seen the videos, you know what it means. The camera that's backwards, you can hear a man's voice saying, "Just be yourself." Then we go looking for more food, we end up in the boilers, and when we finish the clock puzzle, we pick up a flower. That flower is actually a lily, then we pick it up and we go stick it in another mannequin's heart. That takes place in an apartment-style setting, so I'm not sure how related to our story that is, or if it's just for the director to give us that lecture about how a borrowed flame burns out. And then we find a newspaper clipping that's questioning our mental health, saying that we are sometimes heard having multi-voice conversations with ourselves in a room where we're known to be alone. We get chased through the dog pens, and then the director tells us to choose instinct over reason, potentially causing us to steal food from a mother dog. Then Jimmy tells us a story about Lily trying to drown a kid who tried to drown a baby rat. And then she says that there's always somebody strong, or then he says that there's always somebody stronger than you, which may be leading towards this eventual thing of Lily trying to be the more powerful one. Then we find a butt ton of fish that may or may not be rotten. Either way, nobody says anything about it. It's just that gold turns into fish, and I assume that meant that they actually got food, but immediately after that, we find the cookie jar that Jimmy breaks that sets off the whole nuclear reactor thing that I think might have been searchlights, like flashlights from people who were searching for the stowaways. Then we hang a mannequin, and we step through a door into our pirate adventure. And then we murder a dude in a bathtub in a different apartment. I'm really not sure why. I thought maybe it was for food, but there wasn't any food nearby. That might be part of another role, maybe, that Jimmy had at one point. Or that Lily had. It's kind of hard to tell. It's definitely Jimmy, but maybe it's also Lily. And it may have just been us killing Dad, or it may have been us taking revenge on the guy who hurts Lily later. The scene's set in an apartment. I don't really have any ideas on that, because so was the part where we put the lily on the mannequin's heart. And I may just be reading too much into it. And then another mannequin kills himself when we turn off his TV. That was very strange. Or maybe it goes back to the part in Chapter 1 where we find a bank robbery scene. Like, maybe we played a gangster at one point, and we were supposed to be killing people, but I'm not sure how that relates to turning off the TV. Who the hell are those people? And then we blow up the city. No idea why. Chapter 3. We start the chapter with talking about how roots can form a good base, but they can also strangle you, and you need to cut ties to the past to flourish. We start out with Wizard of Oz references, giving us some kind of indication that the kids are using fiction, like the movies and books, to escape their circumstances. The next part that I found kind of confusing was that we found Mom's necklace in the bag at Jimmy's feet after I give Dad the ace. It doesn't really that part doesn't make sense to me because Jimmy is the top hat man, so I would say that it's Jimmy trying to win the necklace back from his father after his father took it. But that doesn't really make sense because we gave Dad the ace, which means that Dad would have won it from Jimmy. And Dad should have been dead long before we stowed away on the ship, so it's still definitely when they were kids. And Child Lily is also telling us to find the necklace and bring it back. We learned that their last name is Burns. Not that that's relevant. Still do not get the plant puzzle. Like symbolism, mechanics, any of it. Like at one point I thought I was supposed to reverse the image, but that wasn't it. I thought maybe it was a representation of like Dad's war stories, like with the heads on the pikes and stuff like that. But it took place in the bathroom / the ship, so I don't know how that could be possible. And it seems like the guy in the wheelchair at the end was supposed to be Dad, but there's really no other indication during the chapter that he was in a wheelchair. Like, there's no wheelchair in the theater. The slide of him with the damaged eye back in the stateroom, he's standing up with the camera. And not only that, if he'd taken the picture in the mirror, his left eye would have been the part that was damaged, and the guy in the wheelchair, his left eye was fine. And also, I'm not sure if Lily killed Dad or if he was just suffering and we abandoned him. I'd like to think we killed him, because immediately before that is the fight where we go into the garden and we are being attacked by the Cyclops, because Dad's got one eye. But we're really not clear on what actually happens to Dad, because he's kind of in this weird control room area. Like, the guy in the wheelchair isn't visibly wounded, but he's surrounded by all these control mechanisms and pulleys and levers, and I'm not sure what the symbolism is supposed to be. Remember, this is not me explaining the game. This is me asking for help to explain the game. Like, I fully admit being a dumbass here. I need help. Okay, this is the part where the method acting thing as an explanation really, really falls apart for me. Chapter 4 is... oh, God. Chapter 4 starts out with Lily getting frustrated with Jimmy and telling him to return to the hideout. Then we see Jimmy on a box as we're climbing the stairs, and he says, "Go be there for her like she was for you." Here's the thing. Jimmy definitely left. He definitely went back to the hideout. He has no idea what happened after he went back to the hideout. So the only way that we could know this story, or this story could be accurate, is one of two ways. Lily's soul is actually present and they are actually her memories, or Jimmy has somehow made these lies up for himself. Because the next time we see Jimmy talking about her, she's dead in a box. Alright, so we climb the stairs, we fall through the door, we fall down all the sets of stairs, we make a sound that is like Lily screaming. It's definitely Lily. And then we're following this trail of apples on the ground. We see Jimmy going through we see the Hat Man version of Jimmy disappearing, like, as he's walking towards a door. I'd say that that indicates that Jimmy may have followed her in spite of her telling him to go back, but we later talk or we later hear a voiceover about how he can't find her, or how he lost her, or how she told me to go back to the hideout, which means that he wasn't actually there. Then we get to that room, and there's a lot of scene setting here. It indicates to me sex. Like, everything's red, there's cherries everywhere. But that part kind of falls apart for me too, because and she mentions in the TV room that everything's fine, I'm not upset, nothing really happened, you just have to be more careful. And then she says, you know, the scars will fade. So, like, it seems like she was, you know, either beaten or raped, and I don't want to go too far into that because, A, I don't know if that's what it was supposed to indicate at all. That's just me putting my crap on it. But, like I said, I'm not in a position where I can tell if we are actually supposed to have knowledge of what happened to her. Because if Lily did indeed escape, or Lily did get back to Jimmy somehow, I don't see why she was dead in the box, and I don't see how she was in the final reel with Jimmy on deck. Like, it's all very strange. But we get into the room where, I guess it's Pears, I think it was, and Lily gets into this thing where she becomes abusive towards Jimmy, or she says, "Why is it always me that has to save you? Why didn't you protect me?" And that, to me, sounds more like something Jimmy would say while he's beating himself up about not being there for her, rather than her actually saying that to him. Or maybe she did. I mean, she's damaged at this point, assuming that what we saw actually happened. But my question there is if she was caught, because, like, the trail of food leads me to believe that somebody was trying to trap her. And we're in a position during the story where, you know, all the people on the boat are supposed to be staying in their cabins while the search for the children is supposed to be going. And then we get to that hallway where all the doors slam, and then they all fall off, and then the last one slams, and it bugs me because it's like, did one of the passengers maybe take her? Because it doesn't make sense for one of the crew members to take her and then rape or beat her and then let her go. Like, she would have been held in captivity afterward, unless, I mean, even if he just wanted to cover up what he did, he probably would have killed her. So it's like, how would she have gotten free? I think is my big thing. Because, like I said, later on, she's dead in a cardboard box. And then we get into the hallway with all the arms coming out, and the mannequin reaching out to us, and we have to back away from her with the formless man freaking out behind us, and that's why we can't turn around. I don't know if the formless man was just trying to make us watch her, or if it was supposed to be an indication of how, like, the mental illness was starting to grow in him, like, as this was happening. Then we get to the lighthouse, and it's just more of, you know, Lily saying she hates us and stuff like that. Which, again, doesn't seem like Lily. Then we get into the lighthouse, we start pulling the flowers, the lily flowers, and, you know, we get to that metaphor of deflowering and stuff like that. And then, you know, every time you pull the flower, Lily cries a little bit more. And immediately after that, we go to that room that's got the big square curtain, and she says, "We were meant to be forever. I will be forever." And then we see her, you know, stabbing the shadow. And the shadow doesn't have a hat, but to me that definitely indicated that Lily was saying that she was going to survive no matter what. Like, she was going to take control of Jimmy's body if she had to. And then we get the voiceover from the director that says, "Forever the dream, forever the wound, forever you," which to me indicates that Lily had imprinted over Jimmy at that point. And then we start getting the other half of the story, where James is lost and can't find his sister. Which is, again, it's losing me. Because Jimmy meets somebody who has a funny name, and tells him that it's his fault that his sister died, and then gives him hope that she can be rescued. So, is this stranger gonna teach him method acting and teach him how to, let his sister live on through him that way? That doesn't make sense to me. To me, there's another line that makes sense here. At the very end of this chapter, as you walk out through the door, you hear Lily's voice saying, "You got it wrong." And it's shortly after Jimmy says, "How can I save her?" And to me, it screams, we did some kind of ritual to bring her soul back, and we got it wrong. Instead of, bringing Lily back as Lily, we brought her back into ourselves. Oh, and I wanted to touch on the rats while I'm thinking about it. So I went over the rats and what sins they identified with: sloth, lust, pride, gluttony, and greed, which would leave wrath and envy for Jim and Lily. If we're trying to shoehorn them into that, wrath would be Lily, I guess, and envy would be Jimmy for envying her strength. And while Jimmy's up against the rat monument, his feet are on a crushed cage, and we've seen lilies in cages and pirate eye patches in cages. We've seen a lot of bird cages. And then Lily is dead in that cardboard box, and then immediately after that is when she says, "You got it wrong." Okay. We get to chapter 5. Lily says Jimmy's dragging her down. And then Jimmy, sitting in front of the furnace, is saying, "I hope you'll be brave this time. I can't. I have no place here. The only room left here is for you, whoever that is." Then the director starts talking about a life that was never yours, which again indicates to me that Lily has been in charge this whole time. And the decision reel. Okay. The decision reel is entirely 100% always from Jimmy's perspective. No matter what ending you get, you're in Jimmy's head, and then Lily gets blasted off the boat. James is the only one who ever directly addresses the player. Lily only ever addresses James, even in that moment where she says, "Jim." Like, it sounds like it's coming from somewhere close by, but, Jimmy's running down that hallway that's kind of far off. So, maybe she's supposed to be in that hallway. We see throughout the game that James is jealous of Lily's strength, and Lily is jealous of James' creativity or acting ability, based on that scene in Chapter 3 where she says that, he would be able to turn 1,000 heads and 1,000 eyeballs and stuff like that. Oh, some other random things I've got on the list here. Some of the sets look weirdly hand-drawn on, like, cardboard. I suppose that's a reference to them making sets as kids, except their pirate set looked really fucking convincing. It was not nearly as scary as the original Layers of Fear. I've spent a lot of time thinking about why, and I thought it was because I wasn't really playing alone, per se, since I spent a lot of time talking, but the game just has no sense of isolation. Between the kids and the narrator, I never felt alone on the ship. Like, I never felt like I was isolated at all. And I need to be isolated to feel like I'm in a horror experience. But another thing we touched on a couple of times is, Jimmy saying, "Captain Baines isn't a girl." And she's like, "Shut the fuck up, I am who I say I am." And that's just where it gets confusing for me, because it's not like they're saying, you know, oh yeah, Jimmy's trans. It's just like Jimmy literally has another person living inside of him, as far as I can tell. Somebody who wants to dominate him. And if we go through the game ignoring the director, we basically don't kindle the original flame, which means that we just stick with the flame that we've been using, which means that Lily is the status quo here. And then, of course, that also explains why James's delivery in his ending is so shaky. Like, he's not an experienced actor. At least that's what it says to me. But it's just, I get the idea of taking Lily's strength as your own, but it doesn't make sense for him to live as Lily and then become an actor, which is what Lily thought that James should be. It's just this weird, I don't know, it's this weird muddled thing. Like, it got to a point where the story made far more sense. Like, especially because of Chapter 4, like I said, with James not being able to know what happened to Lily. Like, it makes far more sense for her literal soul or consciousness to have been embedded in Jimmy somehow. But if anybody else has got a better explanation, please let me know, because I'm struggling, man. Oh, and if anybody can explain the plant puzzle, I'm all for it. But those are the points I got. I need help. Help me, please. But until the next video, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you around. And please, conversation in the comments below. I'm not kidding. I'm dumb.